I think it should be working indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, very warm welcome to the very last session of day 2. Thank you so much, Zilur, for this very kind introduction. It is indeed my great pleasure to be back here for the second edition, for the second year in a row. Thank you so much, and heartfelt congratulations on what you have built here from scratch throughout the last couple of years. Very impressive indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, now the session, I'm not saying we're leaving the best for last, but I can tell you that this is a session that is going to hold a lot of promise, and a session I'm very much looking forward to, because everything we have talked up until now comes down to one thing and one thing only: good leadership. And this is what we're going to talk about. The view from the top, political leadership in the modern age, is what this session is titled. And indeed, as Zilur has pointed out, we have here with us on stage two individuals, two gentlemen who have led their countries throughout difficult times, who have proven their leadership, and that's why I'm very much looking forward to hearing from them throughout this session. Former President of Serbia, of course, Boris Tadic, and former Prime Minister of Mali, Moussa, thank you so much for joining this session. And Boris Tadic, let me start out with you. You've already held a keynote today, one I've listened to very carefully, and one where you have raised a lot of good points. Political leadership in the 21st century, as we see throughout the world, is hard to come by at the end of the day. Everybody's looking for good leadership. Everybody is looking for that one quality that leads their country and their people to the next level. As somebody who's been there, as somebody who has led his country as president, a very simple but probably a very difficult question to answer. What, in your opinion, makes a good leader?
When I was entering in politics, being member of a semi-legal organization in 1970s, I was dreaming to bring democracy in Yugoslavia in that time, which wasn't a democratic country. That was a communist country in that time. And I was participating in semi-illegal organization with my friends, and my father, who used to be philosopher and political philosopher, said to me, politics is very interesting, very dangerous, but politics without experience is nothing. And this is first that I would like to share with you. To be politician without experience, okay, this is very challenging for young people, that's nice, but it's very difficult to be a real politician and statesman without experience.
And there's no rehearsal to being president.
Yeah, that's the problem. When I'm remembering one American president when he said that the worst thing with a former president that he knows right now how to be a good president.
And the irony is probably by the end of your term, when you know what it's all about, you're leaving office.
Yes, I can say this. I would be much better right now than I used to be president. Frankly speaking, I was very young. I was 44 years old, and it's too young for such a difficult position and in a difficult region, in a difficult country.
Yes.
And my friend Moussa is facing with a similar problems, but he's much younger than me. But anyway, to be politician, I mean, maybe my background is helping me to define that, Ali, in a good way. My background is psychology, and I'm always thinking about politics from the different angles. I'm not politician in the classical form, and I'm always thinking about society. I'm not thinking about power, but at the same time, to be politician, you have to qualify yourself by winning on elections, to bring yourself to the power, and to have responsibility and in accordance with the Constitution, kind of instruments in your hands to make changes within society, to improve your society, which is, in general, something which is defining good politician, to change society in accordance with the law. But at the same time, there is dilemma. about democracy and democratic leadership. I said to you at the beginning of my political life, I was dreaming to bring democracy in my country. But sometimes, especially in the modern era, with the impact of the social medias and the new technologies, it's very difficult to be democratic politician right now. And maybe you are not in a position to deliver what people are expecting from you in the very efficient way, like some other not very democratic politicians, some populists, for example. They are able to deliver more and to make a manipulation with human beings, with the electorate, because they are using mass media in lying them and convincing them in a specific way, and they are perceived as a more efficient and more better politicians than democratic politicians. And this is why I'm sharing only this dilemma with you.
Yeah, well, one thing populists certainly have, they promise more. Whether they deliver more, that's a different story. But it sounded a bit more like, because you say you were coming from a position where you didn't necessarily seek power. So in a sense, you were an accidental president, one can say, in a sense that the circumstances pivoted you to that. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But let me bring in Moussa here as well. Somebody, as you pointed out, a very young man. So you were once prime minister. Who knows? Time will tell whether things can heave you back into that position. But from the experiences you have made, would you subscribe to what Boris Tadic have said up until now? Nothing prepares you for leading a country, and in essence, when you leave is actually when you are ready to lead, because you know all the ins and outs. Is that also compatible with the experience you've had?
I share what Boris said about the ability to deliver what you promised when you are campaigning, and the ability to give services to the people. This is a kind of good leadership. I share that with him. But I have some few differences with him about our experiences. Before being prime minister, I was mayor. I started my political career locally to being mayor, and that helped to understand the mindset of the people, and to have a social use for power, and a social kind to get the power and to deliver service.
So people already perceived you as a leader before you became prime minister.
Absolutely. This is the difference with Boris. But the main thing is, if you are elected to be member of parliament, to be a member of government, president, of course, you have to try to do your best, and especially on this time with social networks, new technology, people are very, very quick to wait the results. They are not patient. And you have to do your best to try to deliver the service you promised to be elected. This is the first thing. And the second, as he said, we are facing a lot of fake news now, and a lot of propaganda from political leaders and from civil society. And as a leader, you need to communicate, not only to act, but to communicate as well. And in your communication, you have to convince your audience, the public, about what you are doing, and you have to fight at the same time the fake news and the disinformation. This is something which is somehow complex to do. Action and now communication. If you want to be understood as a leader, as a politician, communication is at least as important as action, unfortunately. But you have to consider that. This is maybe something I have to add to what Boris said, and I share exactly what he said.
Though communication, of course, in and of itself is not a bad thing. At the end of the day, you're being elected to explain your positions. But Boris, if we're looking at the title again, political leadership in the modern day age. Now, it is very clear that if you want to become a politician in this day and age, you have to endure and accept 24/7 scrutiny. You have to accept criticism, sometimes, unfortunately, also harsh personal attacks. Do you think that also deters a lot of good people, a lot of competent people, a lot of able people who might want to do good as a politician in their country, but otherwise are deterred from the very toxic environment that sometimes politicians find themselves in? Is that compatible with your experience?
Yes, and nowadays when I'm talking with young people, trying to convince them to come to politics, I have to be honest and to say, this is very toxic work. And you are going to lose your privacy, you are going to be under light every day and under criticism, and you have to learn to teach yourself how to suffer. And in that respect, I'm just after landing here in Bangladesh, I met one wonderful person here who is helping this organization, and he was waiting on me, and he was asking me some things about my career and my life, and I said to him, and how to mature in a difficult time, especially to be a politician. And I'm always recommending to young politicians to read the poem of Rudyard Kipling, If. Because this poem is teaching people how to survive in a difficult circumstances. But politics mean that, especially in the modern era, I'm talking about social medias, taking into account cancel culture, that your work is going to be destroyed. Not only by your enemies, your rivals, but also by the people that cannot understand politics, matter of politics. And this is big problem. This is big problem. You have to be aware that not many people are understanding politics. Even professors, academicians cannot understand matter of politics. This is why I'm always very much suspicious when I've heard that on the best universities in the world, some people that are coming from philosophy, political science are teaching about politics. Because politics is not that kind of science. Politics is a science, but not political science. Politics is everything. Politics is so complicated. Politics is like flying to the space. You have to understand politics, biology, climate changes, you have to understand security, military, history, everything, and to combine, to make a synergy in your head and to deliver decision. This is extremely complicated, but this is unbelievably interesting.
It's very interesting, very rewarding, I can also imagine, but...
No, I'm sure, I hope that I was encouraging you to enter into the politics.
Well, yeah, that was actually that was a good ad to become a politician more than anything else. No, it is true, of course, Moussa Mara, that as a leader, first and foremost, it's the highest honor I think anyone could carry. You will be in the history books. You will have had the honor of leading your country. But at the same time, as Boris Tadic was saying, you are expected to have an opinion and make decision on a wide range of topics from A to Z, which understandably no human being in this room, on the stage or beyond, would be an expert in. You are very much dependent on good advisors. Let me talk about the pressure of this job. It is often said, I'm sure each politician, you, Boris Tadic, everyone else, goes into office thinking you're going to change the office. But oftentimes, the office ends up changing you. Isn't that the case?
For sure, because the reality is always different from what we expect before coming into office. It depends on the environment you find, the context, the economic situation, political one, and social situation. And you have to adapt yourself to what you find when you come to the office. That's why I joined the Boris position about how interesting is our job. It is sure it is difficult, but it is an honor given by the people to put you on the seats and to lead them. This is an honor, and that's why we have not to blame the people, we have not to blame the society for whatever they do against us as a pressure, as a context, as a march and protesting. We have to tackle the problem of the society and why we are elected, and we have not to blame. It is a specific position, it is a positive position, it is a chance given by the others. That's why, on my opinion, I think as a politician, as a leader, elected, prime minister, president, and other top office, top posts, we are lucky. Whatever happened to us, we are lucky. And this luck, we have to use it in order to deliver service, in order to give a chance to others to better their life. As simple as that.
But Boris Tadic, if we're looking at the situation, it seems to me there's a very there's a dilemma, there's a catch-22. On one hand, each and every one of us are looking for aspiring leaders. We want to be inspired, we want to be led, we want to be motivated. But at the same time, we, meaning the citizens, we're extremely harsh in the sense, the way we judge, which leads to politicians who may have come into office with a very inspiring note, but become very predictable because they're playing it safe and their political statements are scrutinized and controlled by their communication officers to make sure nobody is offended at any given time. And thus you have uninspiring press conferences, which I myself as a journalist then sit very frustratingly, and I'm looking for that one headline, which of course is never given. How do we get out of this? How do we get out of this dilemma and this contradiction where people are looking for courageous, bold leaders, but the minute they become courageous and bold, the outrage turns against them?
Oh, Ali, you are posing the most difficult questions, and I have to be the greatest philosopher in the world to make proper answers. I mean,
you're no longer in office, so you don't have to be diplomatic.
No, I see. This is catch-22, really, catch-22, and I hope that everyone is aware of what it means, catch-22. This is paradoxical moment in politics. You have to come to the power by using your conviction and your skills. Otherwise, you cannot change society. When you are coming to the office to be president, prime minister, immediately you are facing with a problem because people are attacking on you, asking from yourself everything. Because they understood, especially people from your party, they understood if you came to the power, you are coming to that position because of themselves, not because of society. And they're expecting you to deliver. Without their support, without support of your political party, you are going to be in an extremely difficult situation, being totally alone in the wide world. You have to have a kind of protection, your party fellows. But if you are not delivering to them positions to be minister, to be this and that, they are not going to be satisfied. By being very principled, you are losing power within your organization. Maybe you are going to get credit from your society, but this is very temporary, and this is catch-22. If you want to be a successful politician, you have to have a balance. If you are balancing, you are looking very weak. You are not looking very principled and very strong, and people are expecting strong leaders. At the same time, people are expecting intelligent leaders. At the same time, people are expecting honest leaders. At the same time, people are expecting leaders that are not going to manipulate with them, with the economy, with the finance, with everything else. This is why to be really good politician is a very, very specific work, very specific job. But I'm trying to explain what it means. What it means. This is in practical terms. This is why I like to teach people to be politicians, to explain to them where is dangerous, after which angle they can expect a more difficult situation, how to avoid it. This is also very, very specific skill. But what I wanted to say a lot of things because this topic is inspiring me, but we don't have enough time. It's a kind of problematic situation, especially in the modern era. Ali, this is something that I'm asking myself. Journalists. I always consider journalists as a partner in terms of changing society. Without journalists, without public medias, we cannot be good, successful politicians that are serving to our society, because we need a criticism. We need a kind of corrections. We can get corrections not only from ourselves in a good way, but from the journalists. But journalists are also like politicians, like policemen. You have a dirty journalist, you have an honest journalist. You have a dirty policeman, you have an honest. You have a dirty politicians, you have an honest politicians. We are not the same. We are not the same. But all of us are facing with the stereotypes. I mean, majority of people think that all politicians are the same. Do you know, in my country, we have a typical approach to the ladies. All ladies are the same. Ladies are saying every man is the same. This is not the truth. This is simply not, we are looking to each other, but this is not the truth. You have an honest journalist, intelligent journalists that are asking difficult questions. I like those kind of journalists. I like a journalist that are asking me something that I cannot respond easily. This is why I like your questions.
Thank you, Boris, for your honesty also. It's very clear that it's something that you're still internally are grappling with, this dilemma. But Moussa, I think Boris Tadic has touched upon a point. No matter which agenda you come into office, compromises, of course, is one of the key factors and necessities of politics, unless you're an authoritarian regime. But in a democracy, you have to compromise to get things done. Was that a learning process for you?
The key word is the balance. The balance between the willingness of people and the interest of the country. And every time, as a leader, as a politician, even as a leader of political party, we have to try to get the exact balance between both things. What the people face to me needs, want in my political party, in the society, and what is good for the collectivity. As a mayor and as a government. If you take, for example, the huge need of change from the youth, specifically from the youth. Every time they need huge change, transformation, revolution. And the rules, the functioning of the state, the procedures, the bureaucracy, you have to find the right way between these two things. How to make procedures, organization, state, rules ready for change and delivering services. This is one thing. The second, our capital cities, big cities in our country, they are different from the rural zones. And the risk for the leader is to focus themselves too much on capital cities, on big cities, because of protest, march, social media, and other things, instead of rural zone, zone of production, zone of creation of welfare. And we have to balance how to avoid unpopularity, how to serve people in the cities, and at the same time to make sure that we are not compromising the future of the country.
Right.
The key word is balance.
Yeah, balance indeed. And of course, you pointed out a dilemma that I think most of us are facing, the urban versus the rural, because that brings up an important point, Boris Tadic. When you are in power, you are surrounded 24/7 by a team that sometimes perhaps tells you what you want to hear, maybe shields you from certain things. How difficult is it to be in power, but at the same time stay very much in tune and in touch with the concerns of the average person on the street? Because that is the major blame and accusation that politicians sometimes are facing, isn't it? That they're aloof, they're detached, they no longer know what the concerns, fears, and worries of the average people are. How do you prevent this wall, this invisible wall, from coming up between the leader and the voters?
Okay, without that kind of distance, you cannot function. But at the same time, if your distance is too strong, you are not able to function. This is a paradoxical moment. I mean, I'm not but a really typical politician. I don't know whether I'm psychologist in politics or politician in psychology. But because of that, I was suffering very much. Sometimes I wasn't able to understand how big that distance has to be. Sometimes the people have been approaching easily to me, and this is, in terms of energy, in terms of functioning, in terms of appropriate reaction, unsustainable. I'm talking with you very openly right now, but this is very difficult to explain, for example, election campaign, because people are expecting you to serve to them. But at the same time, people are expecting you to be somehow untouchable and to be kind of representative of the God on the earth. I mean, even in democracy. I remember when I was always in favor of democracy, okay? I'm first democratically elected president in my country. Always in favor of democracy. But I remember when I was coming in a very poor area, a region of my country, and I saw many, many people coming to me. And I remember the young ladies came with the babies, asking me to touch them, only to touch them. And I understood, for me, it was always unacceptable manipulation with the kids in politics. I always considered Adolf Hitler as a dictator and a war criminal who has been touching babies. You remember that kind of photos. That was manipulation with the babies. And I was reserved. But I understood, without doing this in this concrete situation, that woman is going to be afraid and very much disappointed, because she's expecting that somehow I'm protecting her baby. I'm not doing that by touching her head, but she considered me as a kind of protector. And I had the dilemma what to do, whether to escape from the situation or to do something which is good for this woman. Very difficult situation. At the same time, you have to explain in the public media that we are not messenger from the sky. We are ordinary people. Politicians are ordinary people with they fear, with problems, and we are really ordinary people. Unfortunately, people are expecting from politicians that they are electing to be something special, which is not possible.
Because they're projecting their own
people are projecting their wishes and the desires in the politicians that are only ordinary people. I'm finishing with it. I do not want to monopolize the situation. Trying to explain to you. I was campaigning in 2008. And the whole world was looking totally different than the world that I was facing with day after elections. Because Lehman Brothers crisis started 7 days after my elections in 2008. Whatever we promised to do, what was in accordance with our plan, our visualization, which was in reality, realistic, disappeared overnight.
Great timing.
And I was promising to do this, to build that highways and railways, but after 7 days we didn't have any opportunity to get the money to invest in that. Whether I was lying? No. I was telling really my convictions and true. But many people have been considering me as a liar. after what happened. This is why how I'm explaining
Absolutely.
politics.
Sometimes reality just hits you in the face, Moussa Mara, and then you just got to take the ball and run with it. But the question I have is, what would the when you got into office, and of course now in hindsight, you know a lot of things that probably the younger Moussa Mara going into office would have liked to know. What would you have liked to know before you going into office?
Older than 2014 when I became Prime Minister. I became Prime Minister at 39. And I remain still the youngest Prime Minister of my country. And after some years after leaving office, I think the better knowledge of state, how the state is organized, and how tough it is to change things on procedures, organization, and preparing law, going to the parliament, managing and discussing with member of parliament, and after the law voted, the implementation take a time. Now my knowledge of that is in our context. I don't know exactly if it is the case here in Bangladesh, for example. In our context, the day you decided something and the day it is effectively implemented, maybe 1 year, 14 months between the two dates. This is something I didn't know when I came to office. And
you expected the process to be quicker, more smoother,
very, very quicker and very faster. And this is something.
Patience. So you need a lot of patience as a leader.
And you have to be patient. You have to try to change things, but you have to be patient because of procedures, because of organization. This is one thing. The second thing, and Boris mentioned it, is the ability of the leader to impact his councillors, his own political party, his leaders, about the rightness of the decision taken. Sometimes if your neighbor, your relatives feel themselves not okay with a decision, not in their interest, they create a lot of difficulties and to stop it, not obviously, but silently, behind the scene. And your ability to know that, to convince them, to give them some assurances about the implementation of the law is something which is important to know when you came to office, because in our countries, faced to security issues, governance issue, especially corruption. If you decided to fight against corruption, you need to be very strong and very lucky. And when you come at 39, young, you are not aware forcibly of that, and sometimes it creates some noises on your leadership.
Yeah, making some trouble, I think, on the front. There are a lot of special interests, of course, that want to steer you into one way or another. We're talking, of course, about political leadership in the modern age, Boris Tadic. If we're looking at the world map, it seems to me that, and it is apparent, I think, to everyone, there seems to be an increased trend of authoritarianism plaguing the world. If we would go through by country, even countries that before used to be or would be considered very solid democracies are now on the verge of tinkering with authoritarianism and becoming less tolerant of criticism and so on and so forth. Why do you think that is? Why do you think in the 21st century, when allegedly all of us have more exposure to information, more exposure to facts, Why do you think we're seeing this worrisome trend? Microphone?
Because of human beings. Human beings are very specific. I mean, our brain, our way of thinking, our emotional intelligence is something which is not fitting very well with democratic rules and democratic...
Are you talking about the leaders or the voters?
I'm talking about whole context. Whole context. And I mean, if you're talking about politics and human beings, which is electorate, this is easier to be successful in politics, in getting power, if you are triggering emotions to the people. If you are triggering emotions and that structure of, that part of the mental structure, you are going to be more efficient. If you are triggering new thoughts, if you are provoking new
polarizing,
new way of thinking, for example, you are not going to be that successful in political campaign and elections. This is why nationalists and the populists are always having advantage in the race in politics. This is like in athletics. They have a 10 meters or 20 meters better position in a race against someone who is not populist and who is not manipulating with that part of that kind of structure within human mental structure.
Because they appeal to the emotions of the voters.
Exactly. I'm talking about emotions. If you are nationalist in politics, you can easily say they are threatening us. They are against us. They were always threatening us. They were killing us. They are killing us even today. Look, this is controversial. This is something which is paradoxical to say. They are killing us today. This is exactly what my rivals has been saying during campaign against me and against my party during few decades. But this is paradoxical moment. This is out of logic. They cannot kill us if you are talking right now in political campaign. But that is exactly what they've been saying. They are and they are going to kill us in the future. This is manipulation, which is a triggering massive reaction of the electorate, and that electorate is very strong, and many people are deeply convinced that they have to follow that agenda.
And is that regardless of education level? Is that
sometimes this is depend on education, this is not depend on education. Yeah. Also, very educated people, I know them. I couldn't imagine that those people, the professors from the university, were so able to be manipulated by such a politicians. This is new era, and why we are living in that era. In my view, I think that we talked the last time, Ali, about that. This is oscillatory curve. We are living, look at the world before Second World War, full of populists and the people that came to the power, even by respecting democratic rules. But after that, they became a horrible dictators and the killers, bloody killers, for example, Adolf Hitler.
Using democracy as a means for
they've been using democratic rules to come to the power. After that, they expelled from the power all rivals, and doing that not only within whole society, but within the political parties, also manipulating with paramilitary groups, and finally, they were triggering... Come on, this is Germany. Germany, with the classic German philosopher, fantastic arts, musicians. One of the best cultural ethnic group ever in the world. They were producing such a bloody politicians. I'm always laughing when my German friends are making lessons to me. Come on. But we didn't do that in the history.
But why now? Why now again?
Because this is oscillatory curve.
Yeah,
we are right now down. I hope that we are going to be up.
Moussa, why are we living in this stage of increased authoritarianism?
I will give you our own experience in my country and neighboring country in Africa. Now we are living under junta, military junta. They came to the power to 2020. And the different arguments they use were, first, politicians are all dishonest, corrupted. Second, politicians are on the end of Western countries. They are threatening our sovereignty, our independence. They are killing our society, our people, and they are stealing our mineral resources. This is the second argument. The third argument, we only, as a military, we are able to fight for the real independence of our country. We are independent since 1960, but we are not really independent. We are on the hand of France, we are on the hand of US, and we need a real independence, and we are able to do so. And the huge majority of our country are backing them. For sure, it cannot last, because at the same time, the bad behavior, corruption, stealing public money, failing to give services to the people, the same reality are going on at the same time. But it lasts sometimes. It depends on the context, it depends on the countries, it depends on the region. It could last some time, but it will not ever last forever. We, as a politician, I think, we have to be patient, to stay honest, if you are, because some politicians are really dishonest. That is true also. We have to keep honest, we have to keep focus on our program, our conviction, our ideas, and try to convince people slowly by slowly, and count on the time. It will last, but it will not last ever. I think this is what we have to do. But it is a reality. This is a reality in our country.
It's a reality that we're seeing globally, unfortunately. Europe, of course, the continent that we stem from, Boris, is not immune from that. We have a few minutes left. I'm sure that this fascinating conversation, these fascinating insights that we've been getting might have triggered a question or two amongst you, especially perhaps amongst the younger generation. If so, please step to the mic and introduce yourself quickly with a brief question. Having this wonderful opportunity of having these two leaders up here, and we have two mics, I see, one on the right, one on the left. Why don't you, and another one, even three. Ziller has taken care of all aisles here, three microphones. Perhaps the young lady, perhaps you get started. I will come to you, gentlemen. Introduce yourself quickly and state your question. Thank you. And we're talking about technological advances. Microphones seem to be still a challenge.
My hello to the panel, and advance apologize for if my question takes a little time. You know,
how much time?
Maybe 2 minutes.
Let's make it one.
Okay. So we used to see like our ancient kings or sultans. They were like, they didn't want their throne to be taken by other sultans, or they really wanted their place to take over by their own preferable children, right? So I don't want to sound like controversial, but do you think it is a quality of a modern leader that they should keep a thought in their mind that they need to leave their place for a better leader so they can like become a better leader or do some more progress of their country or their states? Or as our description says in this session's description, they said it is written in democracy that we deserve leaders that we want, right? So do you think we deserve a leader that is doing all their things and not thinking about the country? Thank you.
Thank you so much. She raises, of course, a very important point, namely the saying that people get the leaders they deserve at the end of the day, and thus are only to be blamed themselves if they are not satisfied by the outcome. Perhaps we can take a note, collect a few questions, and then come back. The gentleman on the right, please.
Thank you. I'm a former professor of international relations at the university here. Mr. President, last evening we sat together and I didn't ask you $1 million question because I simply didn't know that you were the president until at the end. Mr. President, I am extremely curious. I watch a lot of stuff on Hungary being originated from the Huns. And yet the Hungarians pretend they're the purest of the Europeans. Now, you are a neighboring country. Serbians, Hungarians, Austrians seem to have a similar attitude on the question of, being firm in the European Union regarding migrants. You do take a sort of a conservative stand. Now, what I wondered, I very often thought that Serbs are extremely conscious of their identity as Slavs. Now, what really, I want to hear your mind, do you really consider the Hungarians qualified to see themselves as, blue blood Europeans? And do you seem to think that you have a more distinct role to treat them as Asiatics, Asian origin?
That very, very specific question, Boris Tadic. To be answered by the former president of Serbia, whether he thinks the Hungarians are the true... Anyway, go ahead. I'll leave that up to you.
Hello, I'm Rezai from ISEC in Bangladesh. So I have a question to Mr. President and Mr. Prime Minister. As you were in the power, you were on 2 countries. So my question is why the governments, most of the governments can't tolerate criticism. Like right now, if I criticize my government, I could be in a jail or something else. So most of the government is like that right now. So what's your observation? Thank you.
Let's start perhaps in the reverse order, because we've touched upon this, Boris Tadic, about a trend of authoritarianism, countries and leaders that do undermine freedom of press, undermine freedom of speech. They don't want to hear the criticism. What advice and answer do you have for this young man?
My position is a little bit specific in that respect, because when I was young and being involved in opposition politics, I was in the jail because of my freedom of speech and my intentions in that time. I was in the jail, not that long, but I was in the jail, and that was my destiny in that time. And I was I've been very close to being in the jail just day before we withdrew Milosevic in that time, because they accused me, and the minimum sentence was 10 years jail and maximum 20 years jail. And only month after that, I became a minister. I had the 2 options, to go in the jail or to become minister.
From one extreme to another.
I was accused because of political thing, not because of kind of criminal act. But minimum sentence was 10 years, maximum 20 years. I don't have a problem with the criticism. I think without criticism, being on the power, you cannot be successful. I like critics. But this is about the way how your parents are teaching you. They were the biggest, I mean, they criticized me almost every day when I was on the power. This is...
Your parents?
Yeah, my parents. And when they asked my father what about my leadership, he said only this sentence: he's not bad. He didn't say he's fantastic. He said he's not bad. That was kind of criticism, triggering me to be better. I know that was his approach. And about Hungarians and the identity issue is so sensitive issue. One of the most sensitive issues, which is a trigger in many conflicts all around the world. Big powers are ignoring identity issue. I am insisting on identity issue. Identity issue is very sophisticated. This is about emotions. This is about ourselves. This is our individual and collective identity. My Hungarians are feeling a little bit alone in Europe because they are speaking language that no one is understanding. Their history is they are coming from Asia, something like that. But they are right now Roman Christians or Protestants, and they consider themselves pure Europeans. And now they have a leadership which is which is totally against migrations, even though Hungarians, like all other Europeans, are migrants. But we came many, many centuries ago. But this is about migrations nowadays. We are from now against migrations. I mean, not we. Some European leaders, especially populists, they are from now against migrations, even though they grandparents came as a migrants. This is specific situation, but okay, we have to understand even that kind of politics.
Moussa Mara, perhaps also your reply to the to leaders who are immune or rather intolerant of receiving criticism, of being criticized, whether it's from the press, whether it's from voters. That doesn't seem to be a very sustainable model for any leader, is it?
I disagree a bit with Boris. I think any human being is happy with criticism. All of us, critics, make us angry. The question is our ability to overcome our anger based to the conviction that critics is a part of democracy, is one principle of democracy. And as a leader, as a society, as a state, all of us, we have to fight to give the freedom of critics in our countries due to these facts. If we need democracy, authentic democracy, genuine democracy, we need to open the critics among the society and to let journalists, opposition, political opposition leaders, political opposition, and civil society to challenge the leaders and to make critics if it is necessary. Otherwise, I think anyone is happy with critics. This is about that. It is a question of principle, democracy principle. And it is exactly the same when the young lady talked about political dynasties. And we have a dynasty and a kingdom, but in some democratic countries, we have a dynasties also. For me, it is not an important question to talk about that specifically. What is important is to settle rules inside the parties, inside the countries, to give chance to the leader who deserves to lead. If the the leader of the party wants to appoint and to help his son as a leader of the party and then the leader of the country, he needs to follow the rules in order to show how his son deserves to be the leader. It is not a question of son and father, it is a question of rules, on my opinion. And we have all to fight for that. Democracy means some rules, some principles, and we have to settle that inside our countries, among our societies, in order to get a real democracy. But at the same time, democracy is never perfect. Nowhere we can have a perfect democracy. It is a procedure, it is a way, it is a running. And every time, every day, we have to improve it and to push up the level in order to get what we want to get.
As being very mindful of the time and being very mindful that this is the last session of the day, I know that most of you have probably have had an overkill of information since the session started at 10 a.m. this morning. So Boris, let's perhaps conclude. I see a lot of young people here in the audience, and they obviously are growing up with their own ideals, with their own wishes, own desires, own blueprint of what makes a good leader. What lesson would you have? What lesson would you impart? What advice would you have for the new generation of leaders? Because you're saying we're right now, regrettably, in a cycle, you're saying, historically speaking, where authoritarianism is on the upswing. You say it's a cycle, so hopefully things will revert back. What do you want them to be mindful of?
This is a young nation, very young nation. I don't know what is average age in Bangladesh, but I'm expecting below the 30, something like that, 20 something. In that respect, socially thinking, this is a pressure of young people to take a power, to take more influence. This is normal and this is good. But in politics, it's very important, as Moussa have said, balance. It's be very important if is going to be kind of buffer zone within generations, and to have a free exchange of thoughts. This is extremely important. Otherwise, this country can be led in a very specific way, not very successful way. And this is why I wanted to share that experience with you. The communication between generations is very important. Monopolizing power by older generation is also very bad. And also I am witnessing that in some countries, new generations, youngsters are coming to the power without real enough experience. This is very important. Second, I wanted to share with you that about politicians. Politicians are very specific people. You can find brilliant people, and you can find very, very ordinary people among the politicians. And I would like to share with you one humoristic experience with the politicians. 2 times. I was, few weeks ago, I was in the United Nations event, side of United Nations in a Harvard Club. We've been together, 40 former leaders and 10 current leaders. And we've been talking to each other for a few hours, and the temperature was colder and colder. That was approximately 12 degrees. And we were continuing to talk, and we talked about climate changes. In one moment, I was asking to say a few things. I said, okay, maybe we can solve problems with the climate changes, climate warming outside, but let's try to do something in the room where we are existing. And I understood. I was in the room with the 40 current and the former leaders that weren't able to regulate temperature of the room. And all of them are intending to run their countries, but we weren't. This is self-criticism. I reacted after a few hours. We weren't able to regulate temperature of the room. This is something how I am criticizing ourselves.
Next time I go to vote, I will make that one of the criteria. I will look for a leader who can regulate the temperature in the room. But your point, of course, Boris, is very well taken in the context. Moussa, also your final words of advice, perhaps to the younger generation who will inevitably will take over at some point.
Yes. The first important thing is being a leader takes time. And my advice to the young today is, if you want to run for being the president of your country, please start near your village locally. Start to be a local leader. For me, citizenship is first local citizenship. Try to be a local councillor, local mayor, and even not that, try to be useful to your collectivity at the ground level. And integrate, it takes a time. It is a long journey, a difficult journey. And never give up. You will face to failure, you will face to difficulties. Consider how important you will be for your country, for your people, if you are in the top, and never give up. First, local action, and second, never give up.
And Boris, they say politics is like a drug. Once you've taken it, you can never get off it. Is that correct? Can you confirm that as somebody who's been there? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the view from the top political leadership in the modern age, I think I would speak for all when I say this has been a fascinating conversation in the previous 60 minutes. We were privileged to hear from two former leaders who led their countries through difficult times, who took the time to be with you today to impart their wisdom, impart their knowledge, and throughout the way, I think we've all picked up interesting nuggets and interesting point of information. As far as political leadership is concerned in the modern age, certainly it's not going to get easier from now on for whoever is leading it in the modern age, in an era where information is 24/7 and oftentimes, unfortunately, sometimes in silos and echo chambers. But here we are. The fight continues for good leadership, and the search, of course, continues for good leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, the former president of Serbia, Boris Tadic, and the former prime minister of Mali, Moussa, this is your applause. Thank you so much.